Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Haley. If this is your first video of mine, welcome and thank you for watching. If this is not your first video of mine, again, thank you for watching anyway. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up. For the month of May, I read 9 books, which is a lot more than I thought I was going to be able to read. In the beginning of the month, I had finals and the end of the spring semester, so that definitely cut into the amount of reading I was able to get done. I couldn't really get much done for the first week and a half of May, if not the full first 2 weeks of May. The end, I definitely was able to get through a lot of stuff. So since I've got a decent amount to get through, I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right in. So I'm going to be trying something out where in the beginning I'm going to be giving my stats for the month. So there'll be sort of like how many stars I gave, what sort of authors, what genres I read. So yeah, we're going to try this and see how it works. I didn't have any 1-star books, which is great. I had 1 2-star book. I had 3 3-star books. I had 4 4-star books and 1 5-star book. So I would say that overall it was a really good reading month for me. I pretty much enjoyed everything I read. I read 2 literary fiction books. I read 3 romance books. I read 2 graphic novels. One of them could be considered a middle grade, and 2 mangas. And as far as female to male authors went, I read 5 female authors and I read 2 male authors. So I'd say it was sort of I don't know, I was just in a mood. At first I thought I was really in the mood for thrillers and stuff this month. That turned out to not be the case as much as I thought. I don't know. I don't really know why I played myself and all of you talking about a TBR, because TBRs just don't work. But anyways, so the first book I read for the month of May was My Friend Dahmer by Bachdurf, and I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. I only tabbed it a couple times, so this was the first thing I read. Let me just say that I really liked the art style. The artwork is really good. I would recommend it for that alone. But I have a friend that watched the movie and he said it was really boring and he didn't like it. And that's also the way I felt about this graphic novel. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. This is the only 2-star book I read. It was so insanely boring. This is 200 and something pages. And I would say that the meat of the content is in the back of the book, where they're talking, where he goes in depth, and he goes page 124, page 125, and he sort of explains his thoughts and what he, you know what I mean, the pictures he goes through and sort of explains, gives more backstory. That's where the meat of the story is, in the very end, last however many pages, maybe 10 pages or something, where he has actual text. And I know what you're thinking, oh, it's a graphic novel, how much could you fit in or something like that. No. You are able to tell a story through graphic novels. Any comic book lover or graphic novel lover or manga reader could tell you that. The pictures, that in the words and the lack thereof of dialogue sometimes, whatever, that shouldn't have any influence on the story you're telling. And in this, I don't feel like there was a story. I feel like it was mostly him saying things oh, he was an alcoholic, he was a loner, he couldn't fight his ghastly urges, his family was falling apart, and all those things are true. And I know that this takes sort of an empathetic spin on Jeffrey Dahmer, and some people had an issue with that. They didn't want to empathize with a killer or anything like that, which is fine and understandable. That wasn't my issue with this. My issue was that was the only information given in a 230-page book. Those 4 points that I just gave, that's all you learn. And those are all things you could look up on Google. So I don't feel like this is worth the $20. And I mean, it just wasn't I don't feel like this was necessary. I really like the artwork, but it's clear in like what he says over and over and over was that he wasn't even really friends with Dahmer. He says, oh, well, we left him alone because he was so weird and we were just kids and he was just so weird, so we didn't hang out with him and we couldn't connect with him and we couldn't conversate with him, which is fine. Like, I get that, and I get that he's trying to portray, oh, well, he was, you know, a killer and he was hard to connect with, and that's why, because, you know, he had all these internal whatever. Like, I understand that, but I don't understand portraying or writing an entire book with, you know, the basis of your synopsis being, well, I was friends with Jeffrey Dahmer, here's my spin on it, here's this whole, like, eye-opening thing for him, like, to his story. Here's this other side of Jeffrey Dahmer's story, which I know because I was his friend. But then you say over and over, starting in the, after the first quarter to the middle of the book, that actually wasn't the case. So I don't know, it just sort of seems a little bit like a sham, to be honest with you. It doesn't really seem like he knew anything like extracurricular. I mean, of course he was there, that's definitely insight, I'm not trying to like diminish that, but just going based on what he's said and reiterated over and over in this, I don't feel like this was necessary, and it sort of feels like a sham. So I wouldn't really recommend unless you just really want to read the story. I know I mostly see like positive reviews, somebody else might like this, but it just wasn't for me. I just wanted more from it. So then the next book I read was significantly better, definitely a better experience for me, and that was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Again, I've got some more tabs. I divided them up between, like, the greens were Elena's and the blue were Mia's, and like pearls, like, or like things that had to do with that. So Mia is Pearl's mother, and they travel all over, and they haven't really stayed in one place for more than 6 months, I think it was, they said. And they end up moving to Shaker Heights. It's supposed to be a suburb in Cleveland, and they move into a duplex owned by the Richardsons. It's sort of hard to describe without giving anything away, and I think that it's really important for people to sort of go into this and let the story unfold for themselves and have their own points of view on it and take away their own things from it. But essentially it's about two very different families intertwining, their lives intertwining and coming together, and one of those families isn't very used to change and the other family is sort of only used to change. And this has a lot of really strong themes about motherhood and what it means to be a mother, and all of the conventional and unconventional ways a person can fill that role. In the middle of all of this, there's this court case going on where there's like a child that has been adopted, but then her mother comes back into the picture, and the entire town is like divided on what they think should happen with this child. And that's just like sort of in the background, but also a very central theme, and that sort of causes a tiff between the very different ideals that the Warren family and the Richardsons have. And since they're in sort of like close quarters and their lives have become intertwined, that really like shakes things up and starts to like get the ball rolling, and you sort of see what the meat of this story and this plot is about. Although this does have so much more to say in the way that it handles that situation and that court case, and the way the lives and of the characters are affected. And this was just like, I definitely wasn't expecting this from this book at all. I would definitely recommend it to anybody that wants a really good literary fiction. I 110% can understand why this made so many people's favorites of 2017 last year. Would highly, highly recommend Little Fires Everywhere. It was so good, and I still just haven't really processed it. And that's also the way I feel about this next book that I read, and that was The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. Oh my god. Again, I tapped it. This book, somebody could have warned me. Anybody, somebody, anybody could have warned me about this book. That's really all I have to say. No, I'm just kidding. I have a lot to say about this book. So this story is about Alex Kraft, whose sister was raped and murdered, and they live in a very small town where this is all like a very big irregularity and a very big deal. Not that that isn't a big deal regularly, but an even more so of a big deal in the small town that they live in, where everybody knows one another and, you know, that sort of thing. So this story follows Alex, who is very alone in a sense. Like, she doesn't have any family that she's close with at all. She doesn't have any friends. And then she meets PK, who is a girl in her grade that she goes to school with. And she also meets a boy named Jack, who is sort of like the love interest in a way. This is sort of a story all about Alex, who is sort of a vigilante for sexual assault victims and, you know, sort of like serving justice where justice hasn't been served and deserves to be served. And this is all sort of about that and her story, and it's told from the three different perspectives of Jack, PK, and Alex, and they all serve very different but important points of view on women and rape culture. And this book just has so much to say about all of those, and I'm still considering doing a book talk on this because there's a lot more that I want to say, and I still have 6 other books to get through, so I'm trying to keep it brief. But I'm really glad that this is a young adult book, because a lot of especially younger kids need to be reading stuff like this so they can see sort of like different points of view and know that like there is never a reason for like horrific acts like that, and that it isn't something we should get used to, and it isn't something that should be like taken lightly or like grazed over or just forgotten about. And this really talks about it, and you really grow to like love Alex and care about her, and she's just so incredibly strong that it's just like I don't really see how anybody couldn't be like extremely attached to her right from the beginning. So yeah, I would highly recommend The Female of the Species. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. So then the next book I read was The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. This is a sort of like middle grade graphic novel about a prince named Sebastian and his best friend and dressmaker named Francis. He, like I said, is a prince who at night has this sort of alter ego named Lady Crystalia, where he likes to go off and wear like these gorgeous and super daring and beautiful dresses, but he is a prince, so obviously he's sort of dealing with his love for fashion, and is this okay, and who am I, and is anybody gonna accept me? And I mean, obviously this is a very like new age and progressive fairy tale-esque story, and I think that it was really cute and really important, and that this is the sort of thing that I would like to see younger kids reading for sure. And I just want to say that I did really like that, you know, he was sort of like androgynous and didn't really know what he thought yet, because he's a kid, so he's not supposed to have it all figured out, obviously. But I also really liked they didn't just make him gay, if that makes sense at all. Like he still liked Francis, but he still was figuring stuff out, because I know that that's like a really big stereotype, is that like men that like more feminine clothing are gay, and that wasn't like necessarily just the case with this. Not that it would matter either way, but I hope what I'm trying to say makes sense. But I really liked that aspect of the story too, because it's okay to be whoever you want to and whatever you want to be, and it's okay to not have it all figured out, especially when you're like a young kid that's coming in to, you know, yourself and trying to figure yourself out. So I gave that one 3 out of 5 stars. So then the next book I read was an ebook, and it was Corrupt by Penelope Douglas. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars, which I'm still really not sure how I feel about it. I feel like 3 stars could have been generous, but then I also feel like it could have been 3.5 stars. I don't know. Okay, so the synopsis is, so there's a girl named Erica, and she lives in a wealthy town, of course, and at her high school there are these guys called the Four Horsemen who sort of like wreak havoc on the town every Devil's Night, which is the night before Halloween. And basically she's there and sees something or is sort of like a part of something, and as a result of this action and the actions that these four boys do or perform on Devil's Night, three of them end up going to prison. So long story short, they end up blaming Erica for them being in prison. So when they get out 3 years later, when our story takes place, they are pissed at her and trying to sort of get revenge on her because they blame her for them going to prison. So that's sort of like the synopsis of the story. Erica has always been sort of like in love with or infatuated with the main like hero of the story, Michael, who is the only one that didn't go to prison. So that's really it's sort of like their story, and it's supposed to be a dark romance, and there were definitely like really dark themes, but this was more just like ridiculous than dark for sure. I don't really think I would recommend this to anybody. I don't think it was like a good like new adult book, really. I know like a lot of people liked it. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I sort of thought that it was a mess. I didn't think that Michael had any redeeming qualities. I don't know. I mean, like, I liked Kai. He was one of the Four Horsemen or whatever. He was probably the only one that would be like worth reading about, and I know that his book is the next one. I don't know. I'm still sort of like, I don't really know what I think about this. It was a mess. I didn't like Michael. I thought that like the main like plot of what they were trying to do to Erica was absolutely insane. Like the way they like extracted revenge on her was ridiculous. Like it was just the whole book was just ridiculous. I felt like I was gonna have a heart attack the entire time reading it because I was waiting for it to like get good in a sense and sort of like everything that was going on to have a purpose, and like it did, but it really didn't. And it was just like, I don't know. I don't really have much else to say because it was just ridiculous. So then the next book I read was Punk 57, also by Penelope Douglas. I was in a mood for like romance and new adult after reading The Female of the Species and Little Fires Everywhere. I wanted something a little lighter because those books were just insane and so good, and I didn't want to sort of like, I don't know, I was just worried that like I wasn't gonna find anything else that was as good. So I picked up a couple new adult books, and this is one of them. I read it only in like 2 or 3 days at the very most. It was a lot better than Corrupt in my opinion. This is about Misha and Ryan, and they start out as pen pals in like middle school because their teachers think that the opposite is like, their names are pretty gender neutral, so the opposite teacher thinks that, oh, that one's a boy and that one's a girl, you know what I mean? Anyway, so they are pen pals for the last like 7 years, like so their whole lives when they're in high school, and then basically what happens is they end up meeting and really not liking each other, and that's sort of like the bulk of the story. I don't want to give anything away because that is like the primary focus of the story, but this was really good. I would definitely recommend it to anybody looking for sort of like a lighter contemporary. I gave this 3.5 to 4 out of 5 stars. It was definitely worth my time. So then after that, the next book I picked up, that is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata, and this is like the slow burn. Like if people talk about slow burns or recommend slow burns, like this book is always on the list. It's about a girl who is a assistant for a pro football player, and he's like a gigantic asshole to her, so she ends up quitting, and then he has to come back and basically beg for her back. He's basically in on a work visa from Canada, and he basically begs her to not only come back but to marry him so he can stay in the country. That's basically like the basis of the story. Since he obviously didn't treat her with much respect from the beginning, like Zapata really has to build this relationship from the ground up. Okay, first of all, we were like 93% of the way through and they still hadn't like kissed or anything, and this is like a new adult book. So I was like, and this book is over 600 pages. So let me just say, it didn't feel like it was 600 pages. I listened to the audiobook. It went through really fast. It really flowed. I really liked watching their romance develop and their relationship develop, but it was too slow. Like, there was no, I could not have just read this through. If I would have been listening to the audiobook, which was like 16 hours, it wouldn't have happened. Yeah, I don't know. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars, which I feel like is sort of generous. I mean, I don't know. I liked the story. I thought it was a good story, but I just didn't really enjoy it as much as I was hoping. So then the final 2 books I read were mangas, and I'm super excited about them because I love them so much. And that is Tokyo Ghoul Volume 1 and Volume 2. So I read these first 2. This one like a day or so ago. I finished it maybe 2 days ago. And then this one I pretty much read and finished yesterday, which is, you know, like, that happens a lot with manga. But I had ended up going back and needing to tab these up because Tokyo Ghoul is, as I quickly found out, is not a series that you can just read through and like just breeze through and that's just it and you just like got it. Like, no, like you need to do some like rereading and some research on these, and there's just a lot, but it is worth it. Like, there are so many insightful and strong messages so far in Tokyo Ghoul about like sort of like what it is to be human and like the meaning, not like the meaning of life so far, but like there's just a lot in here, a lot more than I was anticipating, that's for sure. So Tokyo Ghoul is about a college student. He's a freshman in college. He's 18. His name is Ken Kaneki. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. Basically, something happens to where he becomes part ghoul. And ghouls, basically, it says on the back, it says, ghouls live among us the same as normal people in every way except their craving for human flesh. So that's basically like what the story is about. And this first volume is a lot of like world building and setting it up, but not in a boring way or an info dumpy way. Yeah, this really like sets the scene, and then this is more like, you know, like moving through the world. Ken is like starting to understand more what's going on. Like, we're starting to understand more what's going on. I don't know. This is just an incredible series. I can definitely understand why it's one of the most popular mangas that I've heard about thus far. I'm currently reading volume 3. I finished this one last night, like on the 31st. So I'm like, I'm gonna include it. I know I'm gonna finish this, so I'm gonna put it in my wrap up because these definitely deserve some hype and some love for sure. Like I said, this isn't a series you can just breeze through. There's still a lot I don't know, so I can't say too much other than if anybody wants to buddy read these, please let me know because these are so good. And I gave both of these 4.5 out of 5 stars. It'll probably just raise to a straight up 5 once I've like read more of the series and have come back through and understood and like grasped more of what's going on in these. So yeah, that's all I've got for you guys today. I know this video is already super long, so I'm just gonna like end it here. I'm really excited for June and to have like a clean slate of reading, even though I start classes and like I said, that's super stressful, but you know, it's fine. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!